Monas Hieroglyphica fits also into this. The symbols work, within this.
Jim Egan has how many books? It's like 10 or 15 books.
Yeah, and
that
they're all
put out on. It's wonderful.
And they're all downloadable from his website, which may be D Tower. If you just look up Jim Egan in D Tower, you'll be able to find it.
Just flipped it upside down and see if we can look at.
Thick.
Let's show another angle to see if we can see anything else. It's very interesting.
So yeah, so there are a couple of floors and
Celestis, so the ceiling.
Yeah. So it's really, as spectacular a construction as we've seen in North America.
And certainly these pillars look like they're finished, as you were saying that those stonework on the photo looked like it was structural, and these look like they're finished, plastered with.
The whole thing was apparently he thinks it was finished all around and plastered, and it was actually a room or really a temple.
Mm-hmm.
Really a temple.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Well, thanks for taking us on a tour of D Tower. That was pretty cool. So where does Bacon begin to fit in all this?
Where does Bacon fit in? Bacon's a really, really interesting guy, and the notes I sent to you are called the many sides of Bacon. So basically, a lot of people think that Bacon was really important in the founding of America, especially people who come out of the esoteric tradition, the people who come out of the theosophical tradition. So I'm just going to go through a couple of, but the different takes on Bacon are completely incommensurable. They just do not line up with each other. And very quickly, there's Rudolf Steiner's version of Bacon, and for him, Bacon was the reincarnation of Harun al-Rashid of the Abbasid Caliphate in Baghdad, who was around in the late 700s. And he's kind of the guy known for, the time of the Arabian Nights, or that high Islamic culture. Mm-hmm. And he had a counselor. And so Steiner says, and I'm not endorsing any of these, I'm just laying them out there. Steiner says that Bacon was the reincarnation of this guy Al-Rashid, and that someone named Cominius, Amos Cominius, who's known for writing the Alchemical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreuz, which was one of the foundational texts of Rosicrucianism. They both reincarnated. Who I guess that Cominius was Rashid's vizier or something like that. So they supposedly come back to. According to Steiner, they come back to sort of try to reinstall the old, according to Steiner, to be pre-Atlantean direct connection to spirituality. But Steiner poo-poos it because they are only interested in Bacon's interested in empiricism. Now, empiricism is the science based on senses. The limit is the senses. For Steiner, though, his whole thing was the super sensible, and his visions into all these things, the super sensible worlds, the angels, and things like that. Bacon was also kind of against Plato and Aristotle and what's called scholasticism, which was basically Aristotle reformed through Thomas Aquinas. And that was sort of the main philosophy of the Middle Ages that Dee and all these other people ended up, going against. And the funny thing about Thomas Aquinas, who wrote, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of books about scholasticism, and at the end of his life, he was also a priest. He has his blowout experience at Mass. Giving Mass, and he goes and tells his friends basically that all my books are shite. once I got the direct experience, all of a sudden, all my books are worthless.
Right.
So,
that, by the way, is a common theme with some religious and philosophical scholars.
Mm.
Right? Isn't that what happened to Aquinas?
I just said Aquinas. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that what you said? Aquinas?
Yeah, Thomas Aquinas.
I'm sorry. Yeah. No. I was looking up another Bacon here, so I apologize.
That's okay. It's okay. Yeah. So but we agree. It was Thomas Aquinas.
Yeah, it's Aquinas. All this is straw before what I have just seen. That's the famous quote.
Is that right?
Yeah. It's
Huh.
So it's good, just so people know that I'm not making up shit anyway. So there's this sort of Steinerian Bacon, and that's kind of, and with Steiner, and this is my big problem with Steiner. It's always like, it's Steiner's way or the highway, basically. I don't, you map on, you can take Buddhism, you can map it on Christianity, you can map it on Sufism. But, when you get, but with Steiner, I don't know what the hell to map it on half the times. But, biodynamics works, certain things work, I have respect for it. But the whole reincarnation schema of person to person, that's, I just don't know what to do with it. And so I kind of leave it alone. There's this sort of the Manly Hall, Theosophical, the Esoteric Bacon. And this is the Bacon who's the first head of the Freemasons. He's the head of the Rosicrucians. He's the Uber initiate who's behind everything that's ever happened. So there, and then he gets, and this Bacon actually, he does not die. He goes off after he fakes his death, goes off to a castle in Transylvania. I have no idea why. He goes off to a castle in Transylvania, and in 1684, which is about 60 years after his actual death, he takes on the name of Saint Germain and he becomes an ascended master. He just ascends.
Right. Okay. So he also, there's a personages by the name of Count Rakazi. And and I think when he goes to, was it Russia? Where was it? Was it Poland, Russia? Where did he retreat to?
Well, the one I read was to Transylvania.
That's
Romania.
Yeah, that's where he becomes apparently this guy Count Rakazi, and Count Rakazi is seen throughout courts of Europe for decades, and he doesn't change.
Right.
And then he becomes after that, Saint Germain, right? There's a connection between Bacon, Count Rakazi. Now, I don't know if Manly Hall talks about this, but there's apparently Bacon is one of these manifestations, plays like a pivotal role during the time of the Declaration of Independence.
Exactly. Right. I'll tell you the story.
Yeah.
So according to Manly Hall, and then the story kind of gets regurgitated by Reagan. That there, and you can see the sort of the echo of. I'll tell the story first, then I'll tell you the echo. So they're all like huddled in the room. There's the Declaration of Independence in front of them. No one signed it yet. They're all scared shitless all of a sudden of signing it. And then someone like comes into the room, even though the doors are probably locked, and no one has seen him before, and he goes off and he gives this wonderful, wonderful speech, sign, generations will, thank you forever, this is the greatest thing ever, and on and on and on. And yes, then they all rise up and fight each other over the pen to sign the Declaration of Independence. Mm-hmm. But of course, according to actual scholars of the time, that's not how the Declaration of Independence was signed, but it's a nice mythology. When I heard the story, I thought of, because there's always seems to be biblical overlays on everything, that this reminded me of when the apostles after
Pentecost. The Pentecost?
Well, that's someplace else, but yeah, it's before the Pentecost when they're all holed up in the room, right? And the apostles are scared and they're holed up in the room, and then Christ all of a sudden appears amidst them, and says, I think he says, "Fear not," or something like that, and that sort of begins their whole apostolic mission of preaching, right? Right, and then when they go out into the streets, everyone can hear them in their own language, right? Whatever they were saying, okay, which is another echo which gets in the New Atlantis. Bacon does something like that there. So that's one story. The other story also has to do with the founding of the American flag, and then George Washington and Benjamin Franklin and Betsy Ross. They're about to design the American flag, and then all of a sudden, they're at some inn or something like that, and some person they just call the professor is there, and the professor somehow they all know who the professor is, though he's not named, and he gets invited up with them, and he gives them the design for the flag. And one of the stories also is that, though, he said he wanted 6-pointed stars, and Betsy Ross decided to make it a 5-pointed star for aesthetic reasons. I don't know anything about that. But basically, according to Manly Hall and all these people, that's basically Bacon, the ascended master, coming down and interfering and making sure, America comes off the way he wants it to.
Right.
So that's...
I've heard that many, many years ago. And
more?
Right. So then there's the Bacon who, according to a lot of people, wrote all of Shakespeare's plays, all of his poetry, did the whole King James Bible, rewrote every law in Great Britain, and who was the illegitimate son of Queen Elizabeth, or actually the legitimate in a way, because she was supposedly married. Maybe it was before she was queen. Had Bacon, and somehow so Bacon is thus then the actual heir to Queen Elizabeth. She won't recognize him, and according to these people, and I don't know why they say that, so all of Shakespeare's plays were written because he couldn't acknowledge the fact that he was the actual heir to the throne, which makes zero sense to me whatsoever, but apparently them.
So I mean, this sounds like a really kind of Californian sort of lightheaded thought. But how did bacon, crispy pork flesh, get the name of bacon? Right? How did that happen?
The family crest has the hog on it as well.
Yeah. All those English names, right? Baker, Smith, Smithy.
Right.
It would have been a hog farmer.
Right.
It would, his family must have come from hog farmers. That's they're all.
But I just think it's interesting that bacon is so ubiquitous, and it's such a it's such a guilty pleasure, and it's almost,
the guilt, though.
So it's almost like this esoteric sacrament, named after Francis Bacon. So Bacon lives on, and he lives on through eternity through the pig. I don't know. I'm playing with something here.
Well, there is is in the Celtic world where the pig is seen as a form of the goddess. So there's that.
Okay.
Sacred to the goddess and the.
I don't know. Maybe Shona knows who it's sacred to, but she's a form of the goddess.
And to Demeter.
Okay.
Because you carried a pig in the Eleusinian Mysteries,
right?
You actually brought a baby pig to be sacrificed as part of the Eleusinian Mysteries.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So Bacon has a profound impact on the founding fathers, right? They're all into him.
Right. Well, Jefferson said Bacon, Locke, and
Hobbes.
Yeah, I don't think it was Hobbes, but there's 3 people that Jefferson said were the greatest people who ever lived. So Bacon was one of the 3.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And one of the things you brought up is that one of the big differences between Dee and Bacon, we talked about this last time, is that Dee is a Gnostic, pretty much, and Bacon is not. Right? Bacon is kind of denies that as above, so below, as within, so without.
Right, we got into that, yes.
Right.
So that's the Francis Yates Bacon, who actually studies and actually read Bacon, as opposed to other people. So yeah. So the other one I want to talk about quickly because he's the patron saint of the Royal Society, because this is the Bacon that is supposedly the founder of modern science.
Right.
And